This episode of Make Peace Not Beef is brought to you by Climate People. Climate People is a sustainable, equitable, and inclusive climate tech recruitment firm with a mission to empower the world's best talent to transition their careers to fighting climate change. They connect mission-driven individuals with companies that are prioritizing the decarbonization of the global economy. Plain and simple, Climate People is reversing the harmful effects of climate change through mobilizing a climate-forward workforce. Visit climatepeople.com for more information. Well, hello, fellow peacemakers. It's your girl Lily, the dopest chick on the planet. Welcome back to another episode of Make Peace Not Beef. Today, we're going to cover a super important and practical topic that a lot of you are wondering, which is how can you get a job in the climate space, or how to switch your career to a role that helps solve climate change? Because let's face it, if you've been following my podcast and you've listened to all the episodes, you know that climate change is very real and we need to do something about it fast. And perhaps the idea of transitioning your career to work on climate change full time has been brewing in your mind for a while now, but you just don't know where or how to get started. Well, you are in luck because today I've brought on an expert, Ms. Natalie Lavery, who works for a recruiting agency in the climate tech space that specifically helps software engineers find jobs in the climate tech space. Now, Natalie is here to talk to us about the booming climate tech industry and why you might want to consider switching careers not only allow you to save the planet while also earning a ton of money, but also working on exciting bleeding edge technology from AI to machine learning to predictive analytics to data engineering that will transform the way we live. Now, even if you're not a software engineer, please do stick around because Natalie will also be discussing how you, as an accountant, doctor, lawyer, artist, whatever your current job might be, can transition into a career that helps tackle climate change. Now, without further ado, I want to extend a very warm welcome to my guest, Natalie. Natalie, I'm so honored to have you as a guest on Make Peace Not Beef. So please tell us a little bit about your awesome self.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I love Make Peas Not Beef so much. And
Thank you.
The overall messaging ties really into who I am as a quote unquote environmental enthusiast. So yeah, like Lily mentioned, my name is Natalie. I'm a true East Coaster at heart, but I'm currently based in Portland, Oregon. I recently learned that there's a Portland, Maine. Did not know that, but yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I do marketing and branding for Climate People. However, even more than that, I'm a climate optimist. I know it's not something we often hear in this space that's so rightfully ridden with negative rhetoric. However, I truly believe that hopelessness leads to inaction, and when we inspire people to take action and truly show that opportunity for change, that's when we can make real strides in this space. So that's my professional mantra, if you will. But personally, I'm an avid rock climber, hiker, aspiring mountain biker. It's really not going too well, but I'm trying. And recently, my boyfriend and I converted his Toyota Corolla into our mini minivan for all of our weekend car camping adventures. I don't know if any of y'all are campers or not, but we all know that there's nothing worse than setting up a tent and you can actually sleep in a Toyota Corolla. So it's pretty exciting. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. And thank you again for having me. I'm so stoked to share all the benefits of working in this crazy, exciting environmental realm. And yeah, just getting a climate job and all the benefits that coincide with that.
Whoa. First of all, Natalie, we got to backtrack a little bit. That was a loaded intro. There was a lot of things I'm hearing for the first time. So I'm like, what? I did not know this about her at all. So you said you're an aspiring mountain biker.
Yeah. Hence the word aspiring.
No, that sounds really dangerous because I don't know anything about mountain biking. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Everyone mountain bikes. So I was like, I should be a mountain biker. Yeah, it's really hard and really scary. And the thing about mountain biking is you have to commit and you have to go fast, or if you go slow, that's when you fall off. So I like to brake. Does not go well. So like I said, aspiring. We're working on it, and hopefully one day.
Oh my gosh, this girl's really badass. So which mountains have you biked on?
Oh goodness. Small. So it's like green, blue, and black. I'm still on the green trails, so I wouldn't even consider them mountains. Maybe it's hill biking. So All
Yeah,
around the hood forest in Oregon, but not up it quite yet, on the ground.
not like those super steep hills, because I was picturing some sort of like extreme sport.
Well, that's the idea. That's the end goal. But no, not there quite yet.
She is quite the adventure. You're a lot more adventurous than you look like. So
thank
this
you.
is super cool. Yeah, I mean, I kind of get it because you live in Oregon, and being on the West Coast, I'm sure there's a lot of like nature, and you're being surrounded by that, inspired to work on climate. That's so exciting. So I have one of my listeners. She lives in Portland, Oregon, and I've been meaning to visit her for a very long time. I'm really excited to go to Oregon someday, especially Portland, because I heard it's like the creative capital of the United States. Is that right?
Exactly. Keep Portland weird in all ways, shapes, and forms. So yeah, it's an individualistic state. We'll say that. But yeah, it's awesome. It's the nature here is
become
incredible.
its own country.
What was that?
Might as well become its own country. Actually,
Right.
Don't quote me on that. Okay, my American listeners are gonna like sue me after this episode.
I'd move to the country of Oregon. Country of Portland? I don't know.
The country. Sure, it might as well. I mean, the city's got very progressive politics from what I've heard. But that's topic for another day. So before, I think that's so interesting that you were born on the East Coast, but then now you live on the West Coast. So, like, any differences, I guess, in lifestyles since the move?
Oh my goodness! Don't get me started. It's like maybe
Are you vegan now?
Country, like you said. Yeah, there's so many differences. I think it's because I was born and raised on the East Coast, and then as an adult, I moved to the West Coast. So obviously, very different phases and stages of my life. But oh yeah, politically, economically, culturally, they're so starkly different. I'm sure it's the same with Canada, but yeah, very, very different. The nature, the landscape. I don't think they're the same country, like you said.
Oh yeah, I mean, we just had a federal election recently, but it's the same party that keeps getting elected. So,
Right.
But yeah, so I guess Canadians voted unanimously. But anyway, that's really cool. I think in the States, like depending on which state you're in, like the jurisdiction is radically different, right? It's basically a confederation of different states, so each state is like a mini country of its own.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, you got it. You know all your American history. Go you.
I do. I'm ready to become American.
Yeah, I think I mentioned
moving to the
earlier,
States
I
next
live with a bunch of Canadians, so I'm ready to become a Canadian. Do you want to just like... we can
You're more
switch?
than welcome. Like, yeah, let's trade places. Second time on my podcast where American has offered to switch, like, yeah, literally to trade places with me. And I'm like, am I ready to give up my Canadian citizenship? I
Hey,
can get dual
maybe it's just a
citizenship.
part-time switch. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
So, let me ask you, Natalie. So, what's your favorite plant-based dish?
Oh, goodness.
Since we're all make peace, not beef.
Yeah, no, I feel very passionately about this actually. So my favorite plant-based dish is a tempeh Reuben. I'm not sure. Have you heard of what a Reuben is? Do you know what that is?
I know what a tempeh is. And I don't know what. You know what's funny? Because tempeh originated from Indonesian culture, right?
Really, I
and
didn't know
then
that.
Reuben-
That's awesome.
Yeah, tempeh originated from Southeast Asia. I mean, like tofu, tempeh, seitan, these things all originate from Asia. So I think it's kind of like a fusion. Because a Reuben sandwich, like, I don't know, isn't Reuben? Why did I think Reuben was like Russian food?
Okay,
I
so
wrong?
I'll explain what a Reuben is, and then I'll explain like
Okay.
the
right.
plant-based version of it.
I'm
so
wrong.
a Reuben is essentially like a really big sandwich that's rye bread, corned beef, which I don't even know what corned beef even is, sauerkraut, Thousand Island
But we're all
dressing,
make
and
peace,
Swiss,
not beef.
and Swiss cheese. So it's like a dairy and meat packed sandwich. But the tempeh version of it is rye bread, tempeh, sauerkraut, vegan Thousand Island, which is just Thousand Island dressing with vegan mayonnaise instead of normal mayonnaise, and then either vegan cheese or no cheese, and like pushed together in a sandwich, and it's delicious. It is, I don't know what about it. It is so good. I make it like once a week, actually. It's pretty shameful to admit.
Well, you got to share the recipe with me after this episode. I got to
Yeah.
go make it.
Yeah, I definitely
That
will,
sounds
for sure.
Yes, awesome. Maybe I'll attach it in the show notes for listeners who want to make themselves a tempeh Reuben sandwich. That sounds like such a treat. It sounds so fancy.
Oh yeah, but it's so easy to make. It's so good. Huge advocate.
Definitely get on that. So, when did you become climate concerned?
Yeah, so this is kind of a tricky question for me because I've kind of always been climate concerned. So, like, I don't have, like, a light bulb switching on moment where I, like, realized I was climate concerned. I grew up in a really environmentally conscious household. My family was always taking us outside. We did all the things that environmentally conscious households do. We recycled. We were always camping, climbing, all of that. And I truly believe that there's a strong correlation between a connection to nature and an environmental passion. So it's like instinct for me to see environmental degradation and immediately, and I think even subconsciously, connect that emotions that go alongside with that environmental degradation to my love for the outdoors. Yeah, I kind of thought that was a normal thing for everyone. I thought everyone kind of just got sad when they saw environmental degradation and saw that the outdoors were a thing that they loved. But when I accepted an internship at the Sierra Club while I was in school, I quickly learned that that was simply my privilege speaking. And after having that realization, I committed to learning as much as I possibly could about the complex issues that coincide with climate change, whether that be environmental justice, environmental racism, a lack of environmental education, the racial, cultural, and economic divides within adventure sports. And I could honestly just keep going on and on. But yeah, that's kind of where it kickstarted, I guess you could say, just seeing the disparities there and really taking my privilege with a grain of salt and kind of doing everything in my power to counteract that. But then more recently, I've transitioned to more of a focus on climate tech. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later on.
Oh, yes. So excited to get into it.
But yeah, climate tech really puts that environmental optimism piece that I touched on earlier into play. There's so much room for opportunity in this space, and I really like being in the position to have that solution-based mindset and be able to, like, do good and think of the solutions rather than kind of like the sad parts of climate change.
Absolutely. I love that. And like you realizing that it is a privilege to live close to nature. So funny how you mentioned that, because I keep telling people, like a lot of people ask me, how did I become an environmentalist? I actually grew up in a big city all my life. Like I've lived in big cities all my life. I was never close to nature. So it was witnessing the destruction of nature, that like literally living in a city that was confronted with water shortage problem, air pollution, all these things, these issues that I was bombarded with. I grew up becoming very aware of social issues. So it's interesting how your love for nature is what kind of provoked you to pay attention to climate change, whereas for me it was the destruction and demise of nature, or the lack thereof, that prompted me to become a climate activist. So yeah,
it's crazy how seeing like the two sides of it, like I said, like I kind of thought like, of course this sounds terrible, but I thought that like my way of thinking was the way that like everyone saw it, and you really do need that outlet to open your eyes to other people's lived realities and other people's experiences, because they're so starkly different.
Right, but you know what matters is that our paths converged and now we're fighting the same fight. So I think that's more important than anything, right? And I think it's admirable because you bringing a different perspective as a nature lover versus me as a big city girl my entire life. Like I see urban issues as like the angle that I want to tackle. So I think this is really great.
Yeah, exactly. It's like really adds to the whole, like, we need everyone in this battle together and we are working towards the same cause. So yeah, that's incredible. I love that.
Absolutely. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Natalie's that mushroom thing in your backdrop.
Yeah.
That you're hanging. That's so cute. Wow.
Thank
There's
you.
so many different kinds of mushrooms.
Yeah, I'm in Oregon. Come on, there's so many. Just kidding. Yeah, no, thank you.
There are lots of mushrooms in Oregon?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't say that was my favorite plant-based dish. I kind of have, like, a little bit of an obsession with mushrooms. I think they're so cool and so versatile. I actually drove 45 minutes out of my way last night to go to a grocery store that has really good mushrooms, so...
You should just start foraging.
I'm actually learning a little bit about it because I'm very curious.
Damn, girl. But some of them are poisonous. I used to have a group of friends who literally would go out to the woods just to forage mushrooms. Like, what do you call a person who studies mushrooms? Like, I forgot the term for that, but like...
I don't know. I don't think I've always called them mushroom foragers. Yeah, there might be a term. I'm not sure. But yeah, a lot of the poison ones look just like the non-poisonous ones. So it's a very,
I
very
know.
scary field to be in.
You gotta be careful, and some of them are hallucinogenic. You gotta be careful which ones you come across. Anyway, so, Natalie, I have a question for you, which is that when we say jobs in climate, what exactly are we referring to?
Yeah. So when we're talking about jobs in climate, it's so much broader than just solar energy, wind turbines, all of those type of jobs that go along with those sectors. I really encourage you to think of every role as a climate role. I know it sounds kind of silly, but that is the very basis of climate tech. Climate tech is all about reinventing the traditional ways that we do everything. So like in America, for example, President Biden says that there's an aggressive national commitment to electrification. And within that aggressive national commitment, there's going to be 15 million American climate jobs by the end of 2025. So that's 15 million jobs that need to be filled. And they could be filled by, yes, wind turbine technicians, but also construction engineers and everything in between. I can kind of dive into that construction engineer if you would want me to a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Tell us,
Okay.
how can construction engineering be a climate opportunity?
Yeah, so it seems like a little bit misfit, I guess, because you don't usually think of a construction engineering firm or a construction engineer as a climate role. But if we put into context, on average, construction emissions account for 39% of all carbon emissions in the world. I'm just going to emphasize that again because I think it's so crazy. But construction emissions account for 39% of all carbon emissions. That's just shy of half of all of the carbon emissions in the world. So these engineers are acting as the link between the idea and the implementation of these green building practices. They're seeing firsthand the problem, which is the carbon emissions, but they're also seeing the possibility to reinvent the traditional way that they're building these buildings to lessen the amount of carbon that they're putting into them. They're uniquely positioned to educate policymakers with their own practical experiences on the necessary steps to design the real-world infrastructure that delivers efficient performance with fewer emissions and greater resiliency. So again, these engineers directly and indirectly have the ability to impact the embodied carbon of these buildings. And when I say embodied carbon, that just means the amount of carbon that is going into these buildings. The engineers all know about this. But that embodied carbon even goes one step further than the building itself. If you think of the building, that building needs to have a heating system. It needs to have an energy source. It needs to have a lighting system. It needs to have glass. And obviously the list keeps on going. But if we take that even one step further and look at that glass, for example, that we're putting in that building, that glass can be carbon smart glass. If we say inventive glass, that inventive glass needs to be invented, it needs to be produced, it needs to be manufactured, it needs to be marketed, it needs to be distributed. And again, I can keep going on and on. So I like to consider every single one of those jobs at every step of the way to also be a climate job. So a climate job could be anything from a glass installation technician, or it could also be a wind turbine technician. So again, it's just so much broader than the traditional ways we think about it.
Totally. You brought up such a good point. Oh my gosh. This is one of the myths that I want to debunk, which is that climate jobs are only jobs in the renewable energy sector or electric vehicles, because that's what people think about, right? When you say climate change or sustainability, career opportunities, people are like, oh, so installing solar panels? No, it's so much more than that, because everything, every aspect of our life, there's a carbon footprint associated with that. To your point, construction engineering is responsible for 39% of emissions. I actually read in a different data that 40% of all carbon emissions come from buildings. Heating, cooling, HVAC is responsible for a huge percentage of carbon emissions. So this is so important. Like you said, climate jobs is not just specific to climate change. It's literally every aspect of your life that can be decarbonized, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the biggest pieces of what we're doing at Climate People is that awareness element. It's their jobs are there, and so many qualified and exceptional candidates who want to work in this arena don't even see the space for them. And if we can open their eyes to that, then the possibilities are, as cliche as it may sound, endless.
That is so true. And this is exactly why we're having this conversation today, because I want my listeners to know that climate tech and climate change and climate jobs is so much more than just renewable energy, right?
Yep.
There's so many other sectors that climate encompasses. So I actually want to ask you, so in your definition, what is climate tech and what are some subcategories of climate tech? And if you can give me some examples of companies that we may know of, or, name drop a few that listeners might know or they can look up.
Yeah, of course. So we kind of already touched on it a little bit, but I'll give you the traditional example or definition of climate tech. But due to climate tech's recent emergence and its rapidly changing landscape, there are countless definitions of climate tech. But at Climate People, we break it down into essentially any technological service, whether that be software as a service, a web-based tool, a physical satellite, etc., that works to eliminate, remove, repurpose, and or reduce the harms of carbon emissions can be considered a climate tech product. So these innovative technologies can be more industry specific or more general, but these climate technologies are all working to decarbonize production, reduce waste, and rewrite that traditional framework, like I touched on earlier, of sectors such as industry, transportation, food, buildings, energy, carbon solutions, and climate systems. So yeah, that's kind of the overall bucket definition of climate tech. But then we break it down further into 3 unique categories. Those unique categories are greenhouse gas mitigation. Greenhouse gas mitigation is any technology that actively works to alleviate carbon in the atmosphere. So an example of this greenhouse gas mitigation would be, of course, your solar panels, your wind turbines, your electric vehicles, all of those things that are very stereotypically or traditionally climate jobs. Then also
Quick
there's
question. So when you talked about greenhouse gas mitigation, is that synonymous with carbon capture?
No. So I'll get into that one a little bit later. So mitigation is basically like the things that we're doing now to lessen the effects of climate change. So instead of using a petroleum or a gas-powered car, we would be using an electric vehicle. So kind of just like rewriting that traditional framework. But carbon sequestration, what you just mentioned, is a technology that actively removes carbon from the air. So an example of that would just be like any company that's taking carbon out of the air and using it for something else. I have lots of fun examples of that. An example is a company that takes diamonds, or they make diamonds from CO2, because as we all know, the traditional diamonds that we make are very unsustainable. But this company is actually taking carbon from the air and turning it into a diamond. So that's pretty cool.
That's what I want for my wedding ring.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't have to have the guilt for looking all fabulous. You can actually
yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting for my wedding ring. This is going to the episode highlight, Veronica.
Send this to my future husband.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the only way I'm going to accept the proposal. Like, where did you get this diamond from?
Is it ethically
how
sourced?
many tons of CO2? Literally, this is so freaking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Sorry, keep going. I got excited.
No, you're good. And then the last bucket, I guess we could say, is climate adaptation and resiliency. So this is essentially saying climate change is happening, as unfortunate as it may be, it's happening, and what are some of these technologies that can help us kind of adapt to the inevitable harms of climate change. So an example of this would be a sensor that detects pollution, or a drone to map droughts. A really cool example of a company that Climate People works with is called Salient Predictions. Salient Predictions is a weather artificial intelligence company. So essentially what they're doing is using ocean data and machine learning to predict weather. They can predict weather from 3 weeks to an entire year out. The gap that they're trying to fill right now is that there's a big gap between meteorologists and climate scientists, and they want to use their technology to kind of make them work more seamlessly together. this is an awesome climate technology because this information that they're providing and the data that they're pulling can be used across multiple different industries. So, for example, farmers can know what their crop season will be like. Energy companies can know how the rain's going to affect their pricing with their solar panels. Same idea with like wind companies and all of that. So yeah, it's really, really awesome. It's helping us move to a more reliable renewable-based energy production. And yeah, we placed their CEO, so it's pretty exciting.
That's freaking amazing. Wow. And you've gave such good examples of climate tech that people don't normally think about, right? These are not like conventional jobs in climate. So let me ask you then, what about companies like Beyond Meat? Would you consider them to be a climate tech company?
Yeah, of course. We don't work with them. That's why I didn't mention them. I was kind of mentioning companies that we work with, but Beyond Meat is definitely, that would be an example of a greenhouse gas mitigation technology or climate tech company because instead of traditional beef, they're offering the alternative to plant-based meat. So it's like helping to rewrite that traditional framework and implement that instead. But yeah, definitely. Tesla is a great example of an electric vehicle. Yeah, there's lots of key players that you've heard of that are in this industry.
Absolutely. I just want to mention that food tech and ag tech, is that what you call it? Agriculture tech is huge. And because, our food systems also consume a huge amount of energy and also water and land. So I'm excited for this booming industry.
Another cool company that we work with in the greenhouse gas mitigation sector is a company called Indigo Ag. Have you heard of Indigo Ag before?
No, it sounds super cool. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so basically they are a marketplace of growers and crop buyers. So these growers can put their crops on this marketplace and then people can go and buy them. It's a climate technology because all of the Indigo Ag farmers are committed to practicing regenerative agriculture. So they're not using pesticides, they're doing cover cropping, they're ensuring that they're using good fertilizers, all of those things, to ensure that their farming practices are good for the planet, which in turn uses less water and then also removes carbon from the air. So that's another cool kind of niche example as well.
I love that. And on the topic of farming, I recently started studying vertical farming and also urban farming a lot. I think it's also a really cool climate change technology just because there's so much emissions associated with transportation and storage, right? Growing crops and also hydroponics, being able to grow crops without water. I think these are just like fascinating technology, or growing crops using solar. Yeah, it's awesome.
Totally. I've learned a lot about it recently too, and just like the agriculture industry is something that hasn't changed in so long, and everyone has to eat. It's such a huge part, and there's so much opportunity there. So kind of with all climate solutions, there's so much opportunity, and once you get people in there and you help them get the jobs in the space, that's really where the solutions lie.
Yeah, and this is why I think your job as a climate tech recruiter is so exciting, because you get to learn about so many different spaces, right? And how they all have an impact on climate change.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredible to talk to all these companies, and a lot of them, since climate tech is such a new industry, are startups, and they're people who are excited and they just really want to make a difference. And it's so inspiring to just talk to both candidates, like people looking for jobs, and also our clients, the people hiring for the jobs, and finding the similarities between everyone who's just so mission driven and wants to make an impact. And yeah, it's great to come to work and know that you're making that difference.
Totally, and it's a very lucrative industry. Just look at how much the government is subsidizing these industries, and now we know that there is no alternative. Like, we have to instigate change in our society, right? So there is a huge push for sustainable industries and climate tech companies. So this is not just like nonprofits anymore, right? Eugene mentioned this on my podcast in a previous episode. Eugene, the founder of Work on Climate, he's like, this is a booming, lucrative industry to get into.
Oh yeah.
So now I want to ask you about the important part, because a lot of my listeners are asking me, like, how exactly do I get a job in the climate space? So for example, when they're on LinkedIn and looking for jobs, what keywords should they even be looking for? Because is the word climate necessarily in the job title, or it's like implied? Like, if you can give us some tips and pointers for keywords and what to search for, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I kind of encourage everyone to have the recruiters, like, optimize their LinkedIn profiles to have the recruiters and the companies reach out to them. So a great way to do this is just by optimizing your LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just like any other search engine, like Google, Yahoo, Yelp, all of those. And these companies and these recruiters are finding you based off of the keywords that you have in your LinkedIn overview, your headline, and your skill section. So what I like to encourage everyone who's looking for a job in climate to do is go to the LinkedIn job board and take note of the top 50 jobs that you're interested in. Just compile those 50 jobs in a Google sheet, and then take all those titles and put them into a word cloud. And then the word cloud will populate all of the top words that those titles mention. And then you want to ensure that you have those top 5 to 7 keywords in your LinkedIn headline, your overview, your skills tags, all of that. Does that make sense?
Totally. You know what was so funny? As you were describing that, I was thinking this is literally what I do for my Instagram feed when I'm researching hashtags. Like, because I want people to discover my content and my podcast, right? So I literally like assemble like, you know, climate change, sustainability, all these hashtags for all my posts. So it's literally same thing with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like Instagram for job seekers.
Exactly. Yeah. And then like to your original question too, like, yes, a lot of these jobs do have climate in there, but it's kind of more about looking for the companies and like, yeah, and then finding the jobs that they have, because a lot of, like you said, it's going to say like platform engineer or whatever it may be. It's not going to have climate. So the best way is to become fully immersed in the community and then find the companies. Like, I'm sure, Lily, you know, the climate tech and the climate community is such a tight-knit group of people, and it's once you know a few people, you start learning about everyone. So just like, yeah, my advice is to fully immerse yourself in the industry and kind of go from there, because once you're in, the opportunities will pop up left and right. Great way to get in is by optimizing your LinkedIn profile so that people can find you.
Right. That's a great tip. Like, instead of you going out looking for these companies, why not let the recruiters come to you? Because recruiters do this full time, right? They spend 24/7, not 24/7 because they have a life. They spend 8 hours a day on LinkedIn. I mean, do you have a life?
Well, I'm not a recruiter, thankfully. So just kidding. But my boss.
Oh, you're not. No, of course.
I'm just kidding. My boss does have a life. But no, the most of the day they are spent on LinkedIn, like creating. So like the way it works is they create like a campaign and they have a bunch of keywords in that campaign, and LinkedIn is using their algorithm to populate candidates that fit the description that they're looking for. So again, if your profile is fitting those algorithms, you're going to be the first one to show up. Some other like small little advice is like, if you get a message from a recruiter, make sure you respond, because then your response rate is better and then the recruiter is going to be more likely to message you. So yeah, there's a lot of like various optimization things that you can do. But yeah, just making sure that your LinkedIn is fully optimized and then immersing yourself in the community and networking. There's so many stats out there that are like 70% of jobs are landed from networking, and that is true. Like, let me tell you from my personal experience that is so true. So I encourage you to apply for as many jobs as you can, but then also add to that application by sending the hiring manager or the recruiter or the whoever it may be a message and just asking to hop on the phone. Because when they can put like a story to a name or a face to a name, whatever it may be, they're going to remember you so much more than a simple like resume or a cover letter. So really just actively network and reach out.
Right. That's such a good point. And to your point earlier, like literally the position title could be called platform engineer, but it depends on which company you're looking for. Like that, the impact there is different, right? So if you search for climate on LinkedIn, you're not necessarily going to find any jobs there because it's embedded. It's not embedded in the title, but it's in the nature of the role. So
exactly.
Such a good point about just learning about the space and what's possible. Oh, another tip to our listeners, literally just reach out to Natalie after this episode. Like, this is her area of specialty. If you want to get a job in climate, you should connect with Natalie and climate people.
Yeah, definitely. Connect with me, join Work on Climate. That's how Lily and I connected. And yeah,
another shameless plug. Here we go again.
I can keep going. Like, there's so many. ties back
Every
to the whole,
episode
this
without
space
fail.
is all about, like, building each other up and ensuring we're helping each other out. Like, every time I talk to someone, they're like, oh yeah, talk to this person, do this. And yes, full of shameless plugs.
I think Work on Climate should sponsor my podcast episodes, because literally every single episode I talk about, oh, I met this guest on Work on Climate. I met this guest. I met Natalie. I met all medias. I met Eugene, Cassandra. Yeah.
Hey,
It's
I
so
mean, tag
true.
them, let them know that you're ready for a sponsorship.
This episode is sponsored to... No, it's not. This one is actually not sponsored by Work on Climate, but they should. I also host their clubhouse events. But you know what? Hey, we're all part of the community. We do this not because, we are compelled to, but because we feel called to do this, right?
Exactly. And like
like
we said earlier, we're all here for the same reason. We're all here to make a difference. All here to combat climate change in any way that we can. And yeah, even if it's a shameless plug for Work on Climate, hey, something's just gotta work,
Exactly. It's better to work on climate than doing the reverse. So I want to ask you. So have you ever poached any like chemical engineers from oil and gas industry and like redirected them to work on climate?
So yes, we've had a few. Honestly, we haven't had that many quite yet, but these sneaky little successes are what I like to call them. They are our absolute favorite. They just make us like really happy to do what we do. And I think the reason behind that is because if we take a critical look at the oil and gas industry, like that industry provided the resources to advance civilization to where it is today. And when we think of that critically, we have to realize that some of the best scientists and some of the best engineers are in that space. And
ExxonMobil.
yeah, and if we can kind of get in their head and maybe enlighten them to the possibilities of working on climate and kind of just like encourage them to do that transition to work for something that's good rather than for extraction, that's really where we can make strides, because they have the brains. They just need to be aware of the implications of what they're doing and the possibility for what they could do if they switched their careers.
Hey, Peacemakers! I want to take a quick break to tell you a little bit more about the awesome company that Natalie is working at, Climate People. Climate People is a technology recruiting firm dedicated to decarbonizing the economy through placing mission-driven talent into climate tech careers. They focus on software, data, product, and user experience recruitment in various sectors. The team at Climate People is driven by impact. They're optimistic for the future, but realistic that we're all in a race against time to combat climate change. Delivering hiring solutions quickly is core to their DNA. Whether you're a hiring manager looking for top talent, an ambitious job seeker looking for your next role, or you just want to chat, Climate People has the resources for you. Be sure to head over to climatepeople.com for more information, or reach out to Natalie. All right, back to the episode. You are absolutely right. I actually believe some of the world's most brilliant people are working in the most profitable industries, right? And right now that is oil and gas, big pharma, and all these industries. So if you can like poach them and you know what I mean, like take them out of there, and just, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and that's like the awesome thing about climate tech. Like we briefly touched on it a few minutes ago, but like this industry is booming. It is so lucrative. Like there's so many stats out there with like the venture capital investment. So in 2020, in the first H1 of 2021, there was $16 billion poured into climate tech. And all of last year, there was $16.3 billion. So in H1 of this year, we have already surpassed all of what we did last year. So
are you talking about United States alone or globally?
Globally.
Nice.
So yeah, it is a very lucrative industry, and it is doubling in size every time we look at it again. There's like 250 unique venture capital deals done in this year alone. Yeah, it's like lucrative to the max. So if we can get, even if money is the main driver for these people and transitioning them out of the climate or the oil and gas industry, like we can do that. There's no issue. Like the money is there, and yeah, as climate change continues to worsen, the more opportunity there will be, as sad as that is.
Totally. I agree with you. So listener, if you're currently a software engineer at Twitter, Google, wherever you are, consider this opportunity to make the change that you always wanted to make, because we need that really bright brain of yours to work on the world's most urgent problem.
Right. And another thing is, like I said, the startups too. Like that's such a beautiful thing to be one of the first hires at a startup, you have so much capacity for change, and the actions you do affect the entire company trajectory. So not only is it lucrative, not only is it rewarding, but it's also exciting, and you can make that impact in so many different ways.
Absolutely. And you feel good doing it because you're doing the planet a favor, doing yourselves a favor, doing your kids, future kids a favor. Yeah. So now I want to talk about the founding story of Climate People. I think it's so interesting. Like, I've never met Brendan, the founder, myself, but like his whole story from what you've told me, I think it was like fascinating, because from what you've told me, he was not an expert on climate when he founded a whole recruiting agency dedicated to solving climate change.
Yeah, so Brendan, like, he was a thriving climate tech. He was a thriving tech recruiter. He had 20 plus years of experience under his belt. And he was doing everything like that he could to make an impact on the environment personally. Once he like, kind of realized the implications of climate change, he was like, oh shit, I need to do something. And he funneled all of those efforts into his personal life. Him and his family put solar panels on their home. I think he started like a recycling initiative in his neighborhood. He was kind of doing everything that he could do personally. But he had a huge disconnect between his professional career as a tech recruiter and his personal passion as an environmentalist. And then he read the book called Abundance by, I'm going to butcher his name, Peter Diamandis, I think is how you say it.
Yes.
And that book's key takeaway is the fact that technologies are improving at an exponential rate, and these technologies are allowing independent innovators to achieve startling advances in fields that were traditionally considered unsolvable. So once he read that book, he finally was able to connect his environmental passion and his tech recruiting career, and saw that really strong connect of, oh my gosh, these technologies are growing so rapidly. And when these technologies need to be scaled, they need people to scale them. And it's kind of when he like had that epiphany moment and was like, I can do this. The time is right. So yeah, he started Climate People in the beginning of this year, and I came on in April. And so yeah, since then we've been growing rapidly. We're interviewing so many people right now, and yeah, we're growing alongside the industry. So it's super exciting to see how that passion transformed into what it is now.
This is absolutely incredible. Like, this serves as such an inspiring story for people who feel that disconnect, like, between their environmentalism and their career. This literally happened to me, right? Like, previously I was a software engineer. I mean, I still am for the time being, before deciding that I want to fully transition and dedicate my life to working on this cause for the rest of my life. So I'm so glad that happened for Brendan. And now, because of him, you are here on my podcast, and you guys are now recruiting in the future thousands and millions of people and redirecting them to working on all aspects of climate tech. So
yeah, it's super exciting.
Congratulations.
And thank you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, same to you. It's so incredible to see people like you who are inspired to transition their career.
Aww.
And yeah, it's huge, because that's 40 plus hours a week that you can now invest into doing something for the good. And yeah, it's our future, like it or not. And the more people we have working on this, the more optimistic our future will probably be.
Absolutely. And good for you, Natalie, for being one of the first people to join his ship. You know, this is amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. So, any success stories, impressive stats or accomplishments, milestones in the company so far that you want to celebrate?
Yeah. So I think the fact that we really quickly had to narrow our focus to only recruit for tech because there was so much demand kind of speaks for itself. So initially when Brendan started Climate People and I joined on, we had no plans of just being a very niche tech recruiter. We kind of wanted to do everything across all the various sectors and the various roles. But we quickly realized that with just 3 people, we needed to be very niche because the demand was so intense. So yeah, that speaks for itself. And then there are 10 times the amount of jobs outside of the tech jobs that we're recruiting for. So that just proves that the demand is there and that we continue to grow alongside that. So yeah, we went from 0 clients at the beginning to more than we could handle within a month. We're currently working on 55 plus jobs. And And that's kind of like where we're turning away jobs right now because we're so full. And yeah, we're growing and scaling right now as we speak. We're hiring an operations person to join the team to help us grow, hiring recruiters. So yeah, very exciting times.
This is so freaking awesome and amazing. The company's really taking off, and it has like barely started.
Yeah, less than a year, and we're already looking to triple our headcount by the end of the year. So, or that's the goal at least. Yeah.
This is huge, and it's so important to raise awareness that there are climate-specific jobs out there, because like most people don't even know they exist. So I think it's important to educate engineers, specifically like software engineers and engineers of all kinds of engineers, that instead of using their talent to work on problems that won't improve the situation, they should, right, actively transition their careers. So this is huge.
Exactly. And like I said, as the industry continues to grow, these jobs are going to grow alongside it. So there'll be more climate tech recruiters. Right now, we were the first solely focusing on climate tech and engineering roles within that. But there'll be lots more in the future, I know. And that's exciting. Like, that's the most beautiful thing about this industry is that it's not really viewed as competitors when you're all working towards the same greater cause. It's kind of like teammates in a weird way. Like, even if they are, by definition, your competitors, like, the more people we have recruiting, the better impact we'll make. So,
well, we're competing to save the world, so it's a good competition, right?
Yeah.
This is great. And can you just briefly tell me about the 1% for the Planet program that you told me about last time, which I thought was super cool?
Yeah, honestly, this is my favorite part of my job. I'm just kidding, kind of. Not really. I think it is. So basically, 1% for the Planet is a national nonprofit that allows businesses to collaborate with environmental nonprofits. And basically, when you, as an organization, join on to 1% for the Planet, you're committing to donate 1% of your proceeds to an environmental nonprofit. So Climate People is a proud member of 1% for the Planet, and we donate 1% of every placement fee to an environmental nonprofit of the candidate's choosing. So we chose 4 environmental nonprofits that fully exemplify our diversity and inclusion initiatives. And then every time we place a candidate, we allow them to choose between one of those 4, and then we donate 1% of their placement fee to these environmental nonprofits. Our nonprofits are incredible. We chose Soulfire Farm, Indigenous Environmental Network, the Honnold Foundation, and the Venture Out Project. Highly recommend that you check them all out. They are great organizations working to increase inclusivity and environmental justice within the environmental realm, which is a really, really crucial thing to focus on.
Absolutely. This is such a good point. Like, in the fight against climate change, we shouldn't leave any communities behind, especially indigenous communities that have suffered as a result of all the pipelines and destruction of nature. And so land restoration, all of this is very, very important.
Yeah.
I really appreciate bringing that up.
Yeah, of course. And then, like I said, as we're working to resolve these issues, it's so important, like you touched on, to make sure we're including every community because, there's really no success until we account for everyone and really draw from all the lived experiences from all people.
Totally. And by the way, listeners, the reason why I haven't done many episodes on indigenous populations is because I'm still trying to learn about it. Like, I'm not an expert on it, admittedly, and I admit that is an area that I'm lacking in. So in the future, hopefully, I will definitely try to bring on more indigenous guests because there's so much indigenous wisdom in preserving the environment, right? Like the way that they have traditionally lived. So I've also just been trying to research that. So thank you, Natalie, for bringing that up. And
for sure. There's lots of great organizations out there, too.
Totally. So, before we get to our final question, I want to ask you, this is really important because I know not every one of my listeners works in tech. So, how can non-tech folks transition to a career in climate change?
Yeah, so honestly, there's not really much of a difference from tech folks to other folks in this industry. Like, all the points I touched on earlier are really similar. The only difference is that at Climate People, we're only recruiting for tech, and that's simply because we're in a bottleneck with more demand than we can handle. Right. So it's really similar. Just increase, network, apply for jobs. A big point is to apply for jobs that you think you're not even qualified for. Oftentimes, it's more likely than not, then you're selling yourself short. Just apply for those jobs, reach out, network, have those conversations, and put yourself out there, because this is an exciting industry to be in, and it's really awesome to be surrounded by uplifting people and really feel like you're making a difference. And the last thing I'll say is applying for jobs is way more of an art than it is a science. I feel like a lot of times people are really scripted with their job applications and reading the job requirements and disqualifying themselves before anyone else even thought about disqualifying them. So really it's about finding a way to find your unique value and sell that unique value, because if you can't sell yourself, then no one's going to try to sell you. So viewing as an art and finding your unique value statement and really trying to bring that to the table is really, really integral.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And like, speaking from personal experience, so one of my past jobs, I didn't even apply for the job. I simply went to a startup open house. I had a chat with the VP of engineering, and he almost offered me like the job on the spot pretty much after we just did some whiteboard interviews. So a lot of opportunities in life are spontaneous. You got to capture it, right? Like, be able to recognize one and just go for it. It doesn't always have to be so methodical. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. We all know that job applications is quantity, and have those quality conversations to go with your application. And another thing that's also really important too is that whole mission alignment piece. A lot of the companies in this sector are obviously very, very passionate about their company and the work that they're doing. So when you're applying for these jobs, if you could present yourself in a way that they could identify with, that really shows your values and your passion, that was huge.
And also, like, a tip for listeners, like, I feel like whenever you can speak to your passion about climate change, I think that's really going to boost your chances of getting the job. Because if you're working for a company whose mission is to solve climate change, and you can speak to your passion about climate change, not necessarily even about the role that you're applying for, but just in general, how much you care about climate change, and this is why you're applying, I think that's really going to strike a chord, right, with the recruiter.
Definitely, 100%. Like, passion's everything. We all know that. Like, the more you can show your true colors, the more likely that they're going to resonate with that and want to give you a job.
Exactly. So, and you don't have to fake your passion. Whereas, like, if it's harder to talk about your passion for working for a CRM software company, not to, like, diss them, but it's like, how do you
exactly.
Like, I am just passionate about, like, building this. No, but climate change is, I think it's just, like you said, we are part of nature. It's part of who we are. So
I don't know why, but for some reason you saying that made me think of when I took the SAT, and like we had.
I totally just dissed Salesforce on this episode. Thank God.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, oh my God! I hope no one from Salesforce is listening. They'll be like, "Oh."
Where you had to like do like the reading prompt, and they made you read a vacuum manual because they're like, no one will have like any pre-knowledge on this vacuum manual, and it's like, what?
Literally.
Yeah. Show your passion for the environment, not for your cleaning supplies.
No. I totally agree with that. Like, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and we connect on a human level, not like,
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I agree with that. Awesome. Well, looking at time, we're coming in close to an hour, so I would like to wrap up the episode. But before I do that, I would like to ask you, Natalie, what is your favorite individual action to fight climate change?
Okay, I'm so biased, but my favorite individual action is definitely shifting your career. Like I said earlier, that's 40 plus hours a week that you can contribute to causes that you actually care about. Meaningful work, meaning like the employees understand the value of the work that they're doing, and those values play to the organization's mission. That's coined the single largest contributor to a positive employee experience. So not only are you going to be working on something that's meaningful and that inspires you, you're also just going to be happier at work. So yeah, definitely I would encourage everyone to shift their career, because there's so much opportunity. There's so, like, every career has a seat at the table in this space. And yeah, it makes a huge, huge, huge impact.
Totally. I agree with you. That is like the biggest single individual action you can take, more so than recycling, composting, because literally you're spending we spend 1/3 of our time sleeping, and then another 1/3 of our time working, and then the remaining 1/3, I don't know, hanging out with friends and loved ones. So this is 1/3 of our life, guys. Huge.
Yeah. And like, use your metal straws too, of course, but like, no.
Yes, that.
Like,
That's funny because I just don't use straws in general. I'm like, what's the point of, I mean, unless I'm drinking bubble tea, like the tapioca, you gotta suck it through the straw, but otherwise I'm like, just drink it from the cup, maybe? I don't know.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
metal straws are better than anything's better than plastic,
this
right?
area has so much room for impact, and when you're taking those
Totally.
hours, and especially if it's something that you're passionate about and want to make a change, like, yeah, there's so much
Yes.
opportunity.
Yes, and if you're an independent contractor, you should think about which clients to take on.
Exactly.
Right? Like whether it's
exactly.
self-engineering.
Yeah, and
work with companies that have impact.
Yep. And or work for a company that is making a difference too, if you're like hiring onto a company. And just like pay attention to those things, because so much time does equal money, and wherever you're putting your time is also where you're investing your money.
Totally. Such a good point. Oh my gosh, Natalie, this was such a great episode. I loved learning about what you do, and Climate People is such an impactful company. Like, there should be more climate recruiting agencies on this planet. I totally believe this is the number one single biggest issue that we're all confronted with. So I want to give a huge shout out to you and Brendan. Even though I've never met Brendan, I can tell he's badass, and he's an awesome,
He's pretty cool.
amazing
He's pretty cool.
manager. I have yet to meet him, but he followed me back on Twitter, which is really nice. And it was funny because I was tweeting about the Canadian elections, and he actually like replied to my thread. He's like, "Vote for the Green Party." I'm like, got you. That's the only
That's
party.
awesome.
We're,
Well, I'm
like,
glad
at this
that
point,
y'all have
I'm
connected on a personal level.
Yeah,
But yeah. Thank
like,
you so much for having me, Lily. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I love speaking with such inspirational people who are mission oriented and want to make that same impact. And you,
such as
amplifying these
yourself.
stories- yeah, you amplifying these stories is crucial to that impact. So again, thank you. It was so much fun to be here. I loved it.
Aww. Thank you so much, Natalie. And this is how I know you're truly, truly passionate about what you do, because like as an employee, you're not obligated to do a podcast episode that talks about what your company does. Like clearly it's because you truly believe in the mission of what you guys do.
Yeah.
That you take time out of your personal time to be on my podcast. So I really appreciate that. And I can't wait to wait, Brendan is based in Boston, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is.
Isn't he? Okay,
Yeah.
I can't wait to meet Brendan. Let him know. I'm gonna
Reach out to him.
go meet up with him when I'm in Boston next year. 100%.
Yes, definitely.
Have you met him?
Definitely reach
You've
out
met
to him.
him. Are you coming to Boston
I
next year?
should. We should all go get some tempeh Rubens.
No, you are making us those tempeh
Okay,
Rubens
I'll make
when
them.
you're coming
Don't
to
worry,
Boston.
I'll make them.
I'm excited. See, I'm more excited about the tempeh Reuben than Harvard at this point, like grad school.
Hey,
So-
I mean, Harvard and a tempeh Reuben together, I don't think you get a better combination.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's a killer combo. Let's do it. Harvard and
Yep.
tempeh Reuben.
I love
This
it.
is
I
sick.
love it.
This is amazing. Yes. Gosh, I can't wait to. Oh, I love how I'm making all these connections through my podcast. I can't wait to see you next year. Hopefully,
Yes,
in
likewise,
Boston.
likewise.
Yeah, and maybe by then, Climate People will have like multiple locations.
Yeah, who knows what we'll be by then. Fingers crossed. You can meet like 10 of us.
Yeah, maybe I'll like refer you some people from Harvard. They're, like,
Yeah,
my classmates.
ooh. All right. Keeping that in the back of my mind.
Yeah, we're talking. So what's my cut? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. This episode is already sponsored. I really very, very much appreciate it. I just want to give you a shout out because you guys are my first formal sponsor. Because previously episodes have been sponsored, but it was more in the form of like gifting and like merchandise. But to formally have a partnership with a company such as Climate People doing awesome stuff that's actively fighting against the climate crisis is a first. So this is extremely significant. So I want to appreciate you for giving me this opportunity as well.
Yay, of course. We're so glad to be here and to be a part of it. So, yeah, definitely collaboration is key in this movement. So we're very grateful for this and for you and for, thank you again.
Of course. And to close things up, finally, please do share with us your social media. How can people find Climate People? How can they apply for How can they get in touch with you or Brandon? Please.
Yeah,
this is your
of course.
30-second elevator pitch.
ClimatePeople.com. We made it easy for you. Just go to our website. On our website, you can find links to all of our jobs, our social media handles, our resources, all of that. But we are at Climate People on Twitter, Climate People on LinkedIn, Climate People Climate _ People on Instagram. Climate People was taken. But yeah, so you can find us on there.
Who took that? Who took that?
I know, right? Luckily, they're a good organization. I've stalked them many times. So yeah,
like,
they're doing.
You stole my handle.
They were there first. They beat us to it, but
Ugh.
yeah. So yeah, that's where you can
At least
find
for
us.
a good cause, right?
Right, exactly. They are true climate people. But yeah, our inbox is always open. Info at Climate People or Natalie at Climate People. I would be happy to meet with you one-on-one, share any resources I may have. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And yes, I've checked out your website. I love how you directly have the postings to those climate jobs on your website. Like, it doesn't need to take me a lot of navigating to find those job opportunities. So
yay,
please,
I'm glad
listeners.
to hear that. Yeah, we like to keep them right in your face so you can get on there and apply.
I love that. That's how you should make it. You know, for so many other company recruiting agencies, like behind a paywall, it's like, subscribe to our service. I love how transparent it is.
That's the climate industry for you. We're all just going to give it out. Join us, no matter what it takes.
We have no time to waste. Like, literally, right? Every additional second, like, there's more ice being melted. So it's like, we're not trying to make this hard for you. So,
Exactly.
Love that.
Urgency is key.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I had so much fun chatting with you and learning about climate people and talking about climate tech and the kind of jobs that people can apply for.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you again, Lily. It was so much fun.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was great having you on the show. And listeners, please don't forget to check out Climate People. I'll put it in the show notes. So be sure to check out Climate People and get in touch with Natalie if you have more questions about how to transition to a career in climate. As she has said, the inbox is open for questions. So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new about climate tech and how to transition your career to work on climate change full time. And I hope that this episode has inspired you to make that leap. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to Make Peace Not Beef, and I will see you in the next episode.